Hello? There you go. Hi, Jan. How are you? We're just
I'm
letting in
well.
people. Hello.
Okay. I just to let you know, I don't like being recorded, so I'll probably X myself out, but
Well,
I'll be
that's,
here and I'll
yeah.
contribute.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fabulous. If you can just black yourself out or whatever, and then if you do have any comments or questions, feel free to answer them or ask them. You know, we do have a lot of people do that, so it's not a problem at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you know, it's just it also allows people who are can't watch at this time. You know, we actually have someone in Ireland that from other places that watch it.
That's excellent.
Oh, yeah, okay. And Kevin is here. He's actually from the Philippines. I don't even know what time it is in the Philippines.
No, it's 11.
It's 11 o'clock at night. Oh my God. Let me see if I can. Hey, how you doing? There's Miles and Stuart.
Morning.
Hi, and Kevin. Just want to make sure I got this thing going here. All right. Okay. Well, we're going to start. You know, we're going to keep up with the ally work a little bit by. I'm just going to suggest that we do some exercises each time in active imaginations. You know, and then try. You know, we'll just go through at least the first 6 that Jeffrey, Dr. Raff, I call him Dr. Raff, has just, you know, and then we can maybe discuss active imagination. So the first one, there really isn't much instructions. It's just to write for 30 minutes without the critical function, you know, and, you know, I think if you've ever done any active imagination, that you're pretty, you should be okay with that. But the second one is the most important one. And the second one is, I think, the one where you can actually start to develop the organs of, hi, Jordy. You can actually start to develop the organs of perception. Oh, here's Gary, just a second. We're still assembling a little bit. Okay, hi, Gary. Okay, where I just was going to quickly go over the second exercise in ally work. And if anybody doesn't have it, the book, you know, if you can just, you know, PM me on Facebook or something, I'll get you a link to it. But what we were going to do is go on with Barbara Hanna's Encounters with the Soul, which was the first book written on active imagination. Initially, Jungian analysts were not allowed to write about active imagination. They were only to do it within their, you know, private practice. But Barbara Hanna, who is sort of a, you know, she just wrote this book called Encounters with the Soul, and then everybody could do it. And it's a good thing she did, because the ones she recorded, I mean, particularly this one that's called The Case of Edward, is amazing. And it has so much to say, too, about, hey, Tim. How you are? Tim here is from one of my favorite places in the whole world, Helena, Montana. I love Helena, Montana. But anyway, yeah, hi. So the first exercise, second exercise, which we might want to try this week if you can, if you got time. If you don't, that's fine. We'll just talk about it. Is you do 30 minutes of writing where you pretend that you're some figure. I mean, you ask a figure in a dream or something, a question. Okay, then you pretend. You try to assume the consciousness and the being of the person you're talking to, okay? And then while you're doing that, you try to see yourself sitting in the chair waiting for the answer. And once you've kind of visualized yourself sitting in the chair, you're kind of seeing through that other figure's eyes, and now speak, you know. And the way I do it too, I used to do it by hand, but since you want to use something called, okay, Adam. I think Adam's in here. Yeah. Hi, Adam. Hi, Adam. We're just getting started here. We're just talking about an exercise in active imagination that, is kind of a assignment for next week. It's to assume when you're doing active imagination, and Jeffrey Raff recommends. Now, I do both. I do a certain amount of visioning, and I do also a certain amount of. I do about 30 to 40 minutes of where I just go in um, to the field, the inner area that I've sort of defined, and the inner area I've sort of defined, and I think everybody's going to be different, but is I try to go start at the top of a ridge, and I'm looking down into a valley of forest with a river running through it, and then I can only look to the left. I can't look to the right for some reason. My head won't turn that way. I mean, so it's focused on the unconscious. I can't even move my head, or my right eye is actually feels like it's been numbed, And then what I do then is uh, I try to assume. This has been my latest thing. Hi, how are you doing? Is this Jordy, or not sure who this was? Hi, yeah, Jordy. Hi, Jordy. We're just going to do a little preliminary here, but I'm just going to tell you that. So what I know I have done now, it's gravitated to this, is the person I'm going down and talking to, and everybody's going to find their own person, and I don't know how real this person is, or this personification of a voice in the active imagination. The one that I came up in a dream was named Barbello, and she is the mistress of the four, and she's actually a Gnostic figure. And in the Gospel of Judas, when he first meets Judas Iscariot, first meets Jesus, he says, "I know you. You come from the immortal realm of Barbello." That's what he says to her. Now, I don't know where I got that, but since I'm in need of a standpoint, I'm in need of grounding, something James Hillman talks about a lot, that our life on earth is a grounding. And I think that's particularly true for men, rather than women, is that they need to get 2 feet on the ground. So anyway, I assume now that I am Barbello at the top of the hill, and I try to be Barbello, and I say to myself, I'm the mother of Jesus, and then I go down into the thing, and then first the valley says, "Oh, welcome and honors to you, Barbello. Thank you for visiting us." And then as I go down, the trees speak to me, and then I go down to the river, and there is the woodpecker woman. Now she's the threshold guardian to the other side of the river, and she's the guardian of the spirits of rooted things, which are the woodpeckers. It's like the spirit of rooted things. The first daemon mentioned is the snake in the tree of the Garden of Eden, and Jung says that's a tree numen. So a woodpecker's a tree numen too. It's the spirit of the tree. But anyway, I just do that. So now I do my active imagination until I get down into this valley, and then I come into the picture, and then I can have the dialogue with Barbello. But the whole thing is to practice to develop the organ of perception of the imaginal world. One of the things Jeffrey Raff recommends in his exercise 2 of ally work is to pretend you are the other. Assume their consciousness, lend them your attention. You know, that's the way we can make the inner world manifest in the outer world. Is the one thing it lacks is ego consciousness. So we to make these figures more concrete and real, we need to lend them our attention or lend them our consciousness. Anyway, that's the second exercise. So if you're here next week, you might want to report back. And by the way, you don't have a copy of Ally Work, just text me on Facebook or something, and I'll get you a copy. You know, it's a very short exercise, but it's the idea here is you don't just read books about food, you eat food. And you don't just read books about young, you do young. You know? I mean, the whole idea is how can we actually let me just I'm just going to start with what Barbara Hanna says, because it'll get into it a little bit here. You know, I mean, she's talking about that really what active imagination is, and she mentions the Rainmaker story, which I'm sure you've all heard. Is there was this actually happened. This is an actual historical event. It was mentioned by Richard Wilhelm to Young, and it is just in sum, it's that there is a drought in China, and so they send for a rainmaker, and he comes and he sniffs the air with a nasty look on his face, and then he says he wants to be left alone for 3 days and don't anybody bother him. You know, so they have to put the meals at the outside of his little hut, because you're not supposed to knock on the door. And so then after 3 days, it not only rained, but it snowed. You know, and then he gets in his little cart and he's going to leave. You know, and Richard Wilhelm couldn't let this go by, and he says, "How did you make it snow?" And he says, "I didn't make it snow." And he says, "Well, it snowed. How did you make it?" And he says, "Well, where I come from, we all live in sync with the Tao. And when I got here, I knew that this place was, and I wasn't in sync with the Tao until, so that it took me 3 days to get in sync with the Tao. And when I'm in sync with the Tao, the outer world, in other words, you can have effects on the outer world." I mean, I don't know, this is getting a little beyond things, but the whole idea is that is this active imagination is to help us get in sync with the Tao, okay, or with nature or with whatever, and it is I found this wonderful thing Eric Neumann said, and then I'm going to kind of open up to any comments anybody has. But what we're going through is the case of Edward, and but I just thought I'd mention a little bit of what Barbara Hanna says as a preliminary, that Jung did not invent active imagination, he rediscovered it. And it's called, there's an archetype, and Eric Neumann mentions it, called the way. Now, the way is, there's actually, the Taoist symbol is of the way. It's of a head and of walking. So it's going, that consciousness going. And the way Neumann mentions is just so beautiful. In the cave paintings in Lascaux and Les Trois Frères and the Aldemira, and that you see, some of them up to 35,000 years old, where these people went into these caves, which were very dangerous. I mean, they're so dark and there's so many places. How did they do this? And on these high walls, where did they get the light to light it? And where did they get the pigments? And he says, what they were in this magical, sacred place, and it certainly was, they were putting up the images of the animals that they would kill in the outer world. So they're relating through the inner world to the outer world. you know, and so this is this relationship where we need food. This is a very uncertain food supply for us, and it's of vital importance to us that we, for our existence, that we have this food. So this, doing these cave paintings, was active imagination. It was a dialogue with the inner world, you know. And through this dialogue with the inner world, they were putting themselves in, they were, um, being informed, really. I mean, actually, they were actually being informed by the, um, Michael Harner. I don't know if you've ever heard of Michael Harner, but he was a professor of shamanic studies, and he was actually became a shaman. And he said that the way that the shamans found their medicinal herbs and things was, it spoke to them. You know, I mean, they learned to listen, and they actually did listen to the voices of the plants and the herbs. And this was active imagination, but there was also something very real about it. These forces have a life to them, you know. But anyway, the active imagination is something that was rediscovered. The reason we lost touch with it, Barbara Hanna mentions when Jung was in with the El Gagne, he asked them about their dreams and says, "Oh, we don't have dreams anymore." And they said, "Well, why don't you have dreams anymore?" And he says, "Well, because we don't need to have dreams, because we have a district commissioner now, the DC." And it says, "Well, he tells us what to do." Before, Black Elk and his, they would get these visions from their vision quests, the way, and they would inform the tribe of the order that needed to be put upon their society, and now we think we can order the mind with our conscious mind. Before, they ordered it with a dialogue with the invisible world. And where did all these myths come from? Where did all these fairy tales come from? Where do our dreams come from? They come from the invisible world. And James Hillman tells this wonderful story about this Swedish fairy tale where he goes into this logger goes into the forest, and he sees Huldar. She's kind of she's sort of the Pan of Swedish forests, and she smiles at him. She's a sort of a siren of the Swedish forests, and she's actually very dangerous because she leads men into to death, really. But anyway, so he sees her smiling, and he goes after her, and then suddenly she turns her back. Her back is invisible, so now he's lost. And what Hillman says is the myths and the dreams have a smiling face, but if you see their back, they're invisible. In other words, there is no explanation. It's like the Buddha, who's Tathagata. He wasn't created. He's the one thus come. He's just here, and don't ask questions. And why is this so mysterious? Because the invisible world is outside of time. Oh, and it really exists. That's what Jung. Now, okay, this is just, you can accept it or not accept it, but what Jung says is what separates me from everyone else in the world, every other psychology, is I believe the psyche. I believe that the invisible world exists and it's real. And my purpose in life is to be what the word therapy means. The original word, Greek therapy, meant to be in service to the gods. That means that you would be the agents of time, in time and space, of the of the gods, and they don't want us to worship them. They want us to be partners with them and to dialogue with them. And it's a strange mystery, but if you don't do it, then you're a broken. That's what brokenness means, that we're separated from the source. So the idea of the second half of life, the first half of life, Barbara Hannah mentions, is to become a life, biological life. And the second half of life is to learn the mystery of death. Now, death is not annihilation. Now, you can say, well, learn the mystery of annihilation. What's so mysterious about annihilation? Well, it isn't really annihilation. It is a transition, if you believe what the unconscious says about it. All the dreams of people who are dying, and we're going to see an active imagination next week or maybe the week after of an active imagination of a person who is about to die, which is fascinating, by the way. But anyway, so this is our purpose here, is to we're going to prepare. We need to heal our brokenness. We need, and to be with the Tao, we need to move the center of awareness out of the ego, the center of gravity over it, and have it closer to what was called the middle plane, the one that separates the world of experience, the world of moments, from the inner world, which exists but doesn't know what time is. How did this inner world, now I'm just going to say, this is something I buy into, but I don't know if everybody does, is the astrological ages, which tell us that we're entering the age of the water bearer, and told us that we were leaving the age of the ram sacrifice, and we were moving into the age of Pisces, where consciousness started to come out of the depths in the form of fishes. And Jesus was a fish, and he was the fisher of men. And then it moves into the water bear, where we carry this unconscious with us, and we are going to now feed our instincts with our own consciousness that we're developing. And then in the age of Capricorn, the age of the goatfish, we're going to both be the being of the high places and the being of the lowest depths, the goatfish, So where did that come from? Well, it's the thing we're contacting in active imagination is latent potentiality, which exists in the unconscious, what's called the pleroma. It's the fullness of all possibilities, okay? But it's latent in us. And the idea of active imagination is to make it manifest and concrete in our consciousness and our awareness. And one thing Hillman says, that when you're born with the daemon who's going to inform you once we go into the depths in active imagination and find our daemon. When you're born, an angel touches the lips to shut the daemon up. The daemon is supposed to be quiet until you've become a very strong ego, so that your ego development is not disturbed by the unconscious contents. And that's what creates this little divot, the philtrum or whatever it is under our noses.
Hey, Craig, could you give us that definition of pleroma again?
Okay. The pleroma is the fullness of all latent possibilities. In other words, all of these astrological ages that somehow became known to consciousness, or let's say the Kundalini. How did the 7 chakras become known to consciousness? Or how did the Bardo, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, become known to consciousness? Or how does Black Elk get his visions of that of the end of the nomadic buffalo hunting coming? It is through the pleroma. It's there, but it somehow has to become manifest in consciousness or in awareness of an ego to be known, you know, yet it's there existing in the pleroma, which is where all future, past, and present exist simultaneously. Now, that's impossible to comprehend. That everything that has happened. Everything that did happen is not dead. It's still there. And the present is there too. That's the pleroma. That's what is so magical about synchronicity, is that in when you have are experiencing synchronicity, you're experiencing that the pleroma, the barrier that separates us from the pleroma, has suddenly become permeable, and suddenly now you have access to it. You suddenly, you know somebody's in trouble, or you know somebody's dead, or you know suddenly you you know you're talking about a dream about a scarab, and a scarab flies onto the screen, or you know all these things that happen that are where the material world and the spiritual world seem to meet in a meaningful event, an event that has some kind of a symbolic, numinous quality to it, you know, that we know speaks to us. Okay, you know. So anyway, that's sort of the introduction. Why doesn't everybody just have a few comments, and then we can start on the case of Edward. Do you want to start, Adam? We haven't heard your voice yet.
Sure. Thanks
Yeah.
for incorporating me into this group. And
Well, there's no one. Everybody belongs. Whether just come anytime. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's interesting to me to see, except for the one person, or the Jan hasn't shared their screen, but it looks like all of us are men, which surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what you said about men, especially maybe needing to ground stuff, I can relate to that a lot. Quickly, you know, I spent 27 years in a spiritual community and left about 6 months ago because I had like an incredible sort of series of experiences, which kind of drew me to want to understand them. And so here I am. And we have an exercise in the spiritual tradition that I'm involved in, which includes kind of an imaginative component. So it's interesting to me, you know, what I'm learning here. So, you know, I guess I'll just leave it at that. So we all.
Okay. Well, we'll want to hear a lot more about your story, Adam, as we go forward. And I would like to hear your story too. Why don't we just keep? Jan did have her camera on to begin with, but she prefers not to have it on. But Jan, could you just say a few words of any thoughts you have?
Sure. I have read a lot of Jung, and I do active imagination in my own way. I was in art therapy for many years, and through that I found a vehicle, and that's the sand tray.
Yes.
And I was told that it's the closest thing to dreams in terms of exploring the unconscious. So that's been something that I've been practicing. I'm out here in Philadelphia, but I lived in DC for 33 years and taught high school English in the suburbs there, and was in the Jung Society there.
Oh, well, great. I mean, they're a great society, and I'm going to have to try sand tray as well at some point. You know, this might be sounding, you know, I was thinking about, you know, what's called the genius. Genius is another word for daemon. They used to have a word called the genius loci, you know, the god of local places. And there was and, you know, there's ghosts of local places. You know, there's a ghost that just stays at a place, you know. And so, you know, a person, lots of people come that know nothing about the ghost, and it's they all see it, you know, and they didn't know it was there, so it just stays at that place. But I was actually thinking of doing an active imagination in a very sacred and special place, like maybe a cemetery or something, you know. And I don't know whether that's morbid or not, but I definitely need to try some sand tray too. Jordy, now how about you? What do you have to say today? Well, here, let me unmute you first. There, go ahead.
Hello, greetings to everyone. Craig, a practical question. Is the whole thing recorded at some point?
Is the what now?
Is the session recorded?
Yes, it is.
Because I mean, English for me, it's the third language or the fourth language I learn. So I have no problems reading, I have no problems lecturing, but interacting can be cumbersome at some point.
Yes. There are three different skills. I tried to learn Norwegian, and it's one thing to read it. It's another thing to speak it, and it's another thing to hear it, you know, I mean, and understand and comprehend. I mean, they're not all the same organs of perception, for sure.
Yeah.
But
I am US trained. I have a medical degree and a Master of Public Health from an Ivy League university. And I am, you can call a 10-year civil servant in the technical branch of my Ministry of Health. Greetings from Madrid. We are confined in a stage 0. That means physical distance called social distance, but
yes,
it's
yes,
basic physical distance, and it's a pain in the ass.
yes. So is the fuss. There's getting to be fatigue. We're getting tired of it.
As per my background, I become interested in the spiritual dimensions of life when I was 40 or something like that. I had some dealings with, say, brotherhood type of spirituality. Then I was involved briefly with the men's movement in the late 90s. And I do practice meditation regularly, Vipassana flavor. It suits better to me than Zen.
Yes.
It does work. Now, Barbara had an active imagination. It's a missing course that finally have an opportunity to get exposed.
Yes.
It's something I wanted to attempt for a long time. I had long time ago some experience with the silver mind control thing, which basically didn't work for me. And I think it had to do with the type of people, the type of community which was involved with that.
I think it's basically developing. I mean, for me, I mean, I think most of us here are beginners, and what we're going to be doing as we do active imagination is to develop the organs of perception for images that come in to the meditation. To either, if you're going to do visioning or doing sand play or doing automatic writing, which is what this Jeffrey Raff recommends, 30 minutes of written dialogue, you know, where you write a question to a dream and then you write the answer while you pretend you're the other person, like you're in a play, but you're every figure in the play. But when you're playing a figure that's not you, you need to be that person. Now, it might at begin seem kind of phony or fake, but he says as you do it, you're going to actually, at some point, it's going to be that figure speaking, not you, you know. And Barbara Hanna says that too, but that's becoming permeable and open to the images of the imaginal world. And, you know, I don't know if you've heard of Henry Corbin. You know, he's he was an expert on the Sufi who were very the original Sufis, who were Persians, not so much Islamic, but more of a mystical tradition like Gnosticism, but it was relating to the imaginal world and really relating to the daimon. It was sort of an alchemical type thing. And of course, alchemy is also is active imagination. I mean, there is the vessel, which is the womb, and then you heat it up. And how do you heat it up? You heat it up with attention. You lend your attention to the contents of the vessel, and then it speaks to you. But what were you going to say, Jordy?
Well, Henry Corbin can be quite dense.
Yes, very dense. He can. I don't know, what language are you reading him in?
Well, I try to read in French.
Yes.
My French was my third language, and English the fourth.
Yes.
But I am better in English or Spanish. We have good Spanish translations.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's very dense.
It's dense in all languages, I mean.
Yes, it's dense in all languages. But anyway, he was a very so this tradition, and then you can add Peter Kingsley to that, and you know, with Parmenides and Pythagoras and all these figures in Greece who you know, Peter Kingsley says that all of our civilization, everything in civilization, of course, you know, in what we call civilization now, is so far removed from nature, so far removed from the season, changing the seasons, and the world of the animals and the plants and the dawn and evening, you know, but still all of this amazing culture that we've acquired, Peter Kingsley's opinion is, came from people lying down in dark places and dying. You know, you know, in other words, they were doing active imagination, or by the way he recommends is you're dead. Okay, now let the voices of the depth speak to you, and they'll be more open once you know you're dead. You know, but anyway, that's getting a little dark. One thing he says, I'm just going to mention, because this is the quality of Peter Kingsley. He says that we shouldn't pay attention to the light. He says the light is the chandelier in the Titanic. He says you should pay more attention to the dark sea and outside the ship. You know, I mean, that's what he says, where the depths speak. Yes, go ahead, Jordy.
One practical question. Do we have a chat opportunity here? Yes.
Yes, you do. There is a chat. If you look on your Zoom, should be a chat button down on the lower. You got a PC. Yeah, it'd be yeah.
I have a tablet of sorts. Now, it's for the references, bibliography, and things like that. But I heard about Kingsley, but I have.
Yes. Well, if you could, if you found this group on Facebook, if you would just DM me, we'll put you on the mailing list, and I will send you copies of all of the books we're reading in PDF form. They'll be in English, but yeah.
Team members Craig Nelson.
Craig Nelson, yes. And I will just friend me or just DM me or whatever they call that. And I'll send you copies of all the books, and I won't send you Peter Kingsley, or he'll threaten to sue me. He's already done it. So, okay.
I just discovered this group. I just got Barbara Hannah's book.
Yes.
I don't have yet the Jeffrey Raff one.
Yes, I will send it to you, Jordy. Just instant message me, and I'll get you copies of all of them that you can read on any computer or mobile device.
Now, I'll appreciate some sort of syllabus, so to speak, say a daily homework or something.
Yes.
I mean, my plan is to take that as a for credit type of college course or something like that.
Okay, sure. Well, the thing that my general idea here was that we're going to continue to work through the active imagination exercises in Jeffrey Raff's book all the time, every week. And the one that we'll do for next time is exercise number 2, and it's on pretending you're being all the actors in a play, in hopefully some kind of dream that you've had, because the idea with the dream, the value of the dream is that it is pure. It's the pure voice of the depths, and if we can work with the pure voice of the depths that we have in our dreams, I think it is better than trying to just work with how can I get along with so and so at work. I mean, that you can do active imaginations on that, but I think if you really want to develop the organs of perception, that it's best to start with dreams. I mean, to go to manifesting the ally. Jeffrey Raff is pretty optimistic about our abilities. I think we have to just start out with dreams. The ally is somewhat like an angel, and he's actually had them come up and thump him in the chest like this, or sit on his bed and watch the mattress go down. I mean, this is Jeffrey Raff, even before he went to Zurich and studied with Marie-Louise von Franz and all these people. Well, anyway, why don't we just keep going around and let's just talk a little bit, and we'll try to go through this case of Edward, and I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I can. But why don't we start with you, Stuart? Now, Stuart is a very accomplished, he's been in the transmedium world, so he is very, very permeable to the world of active imagination and dream. Do you have any comments, Stuart?
Yeah, I can do. I've also worked for many years as a therapist, mainly through Gestalt, but with a basis of Jung within that. So, and various other sort of methods alongside it. With Hikomi, which is a form of psychotherapy, body-centered psychotherapy, there's the whole principle of holding the self within the room. A client comes in and they have a problem or a difficulty or a block of some sort, and the therapist knows that the self is present, and in the knowing that the self is present, brings in the possibility of the self. He or she holds the transcendent function, if you like, for the client through the knowing of the self. So by holding, if you break that down and say, okay, well, how does that apply to active imagination? In a sense, the therapist's role within that, or within Gestalt, is to follow the aliveness within the room to see which potential wishes to come to life first. So you're engaging with the client, you're holding the space, you're meeting the client in their, within their block. Their block is your block. And by bringing life into yourself, you're also encouraging life to come into the client and into the room in the form of some sort of new expression. So that new expression is the potential of the pleroma, if you like, manifesting as a new possibility, a non-thought of possibility. So it's very much in the moment, if you like, that this active imagination happens. Us studying it or us reading about it, it's really only supporting that renewal of life within us. As we sort of go around it by reading about it and even by practicing it. The way I would see it is that we're inviting that presence of the self, aliveness, to enter into us in the form of a new point of view, a new understanding, a new potential that arises. So do we need to draw on the wall of the cave? Well, yeah, if that's what works, or sand tray work, or whatever works. You could do it walking down the street, or you could do it sitting in your room, or you could do it in a very creative way. It really makes no difference. It's to find out where are you going to engage with the process from. Everybody has a different orientation. Okay, we'll use that. There's no difference between orientations really when you see them as a place of beginning. We'll step in from that place, and I always found through the therapy work that it was always good practice to follow the find out where the deadness is and bring aliveness to it. So
Yeah.
so work with the deadness, work with the block by being alive with it, offering it a potential. So that could be holding a pen in my hand and looking at how stuck I am. Oh, I can't think of any words. Okay, well, I'm going to move my elbow until I
Yeah.
start marking the page, and
Yeah.
now we're off. Do you see?
Yeah.
So it's introducing the possibility, introducing the energy of possibility, so that new things emerge. So that would be my take on it, or that would be my suggestion in it.
It's a very good suggestion too that I didn't mention, but when Stuart said holding the self and talking about the aliveness, I mean, what is a good idea is to, this is another exercise that it comes later in Jeffrey Rapp, but it might be good to combine it with this one, is ask this figure to show you a vision of light. Okay. Now this vision of light is going to be what, you can give it any name, but it's either called the lumen natura, it's the light of nature. So you could also call it aliveness, or you could also call it the image in the heart. This is the acorn in the heart, the rhizome, which is, and the heart is so important in all of this work. We have to remember that we're everything we're doing right now, and I kind of feel guilty about it, is I'm just rattling on rat-a-tat-tat with concepts and thoughts and words and things. We have to use all four functions, and this intuition, feeling, sensation, and the probably the least important is the conceptual aspect, or the thinking, or this word salad that you've been hearing me talking about. But the idea is, when you're doing the active imagination, it might even be best to start out with is show me the light. In other words, if you can hold the zoom, and if you've done a lot of meditation, it's probably very easy for you. But if you can hold that zoom of the lumen natura in your third eye or in your heart, either whichever one works for you. I mean, I usually have it up here. I would love to have it be in the fullness that I feel in the heart, but I'm a sensate feeling deprived person. I'm an intuitive thinker. So that's a skill. That's the deadness that Stuart is speaking about, that I need to bring life to, But I'm just saying that I think holding on to the self is kind of like, isn't that sort of what you meant, or not, Stuart?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Gary, how about you? We're just going to go around the room and hear everybody's voice, and then I'll try to get through as much as I can at the case of Edward, and I'll try to do it in short bits so we can
Well, I was just
talk.
I've been enjoying Barbara Hanna, and I've read her before, and I've read the Raff before, and I've attempted the Raff before. And Raff, some of his stuff always was just so out of reach, and this, and active imagination. This is not an easy thing to do. This you tend to resist it. It's not at all natural. And I found for myself that when I'm going to do it, mostly I work on dreams, that I like to meditate first, and then I actually have a dance that I also do to kind of get into
Yes.
into the sensate, that being my inferior function.
Yeah.
And so after this, then I can be more in my body instead of my head, which makes it a little easier to work with. And and the thing that really helped me too was, Stuart had talked about the aliveness, and so in the meditations, I did that exercise where you go to some point in your body and you try to find, well, where do you feel alive? And then you amplify it, you know. And so for me, it'd be like around the heart, and then it would start, you know, going down the body a little bit, you know, get to the solar plexus. And if I'm, you know, really lucky, it would extend down a little bit farther than that. But that exercise, you know, because in the active imagination, you need that aliveness. If you can't have it, you just, you know, it's like you can't force it. So,
have a dialogue with the heart, you
yeah,
know, or
yeah.
have a dialogue with either the you know, Stuart did this thing where you touch the fingers and you feel the consciousness there, and then you, I mean, all of our parts of our body, if you sit here right now and just try to become aware of your body, you're going to feel consciousness in all of its aspects. And sometimes when someone says something, you're going to feel a surge of energy in certain parts of your body. You know, have a dialogue with their, the reason that I think that's good or helpful is because I want to hear the voice of that part of non-ego that I have a consciousness of. And I do have consciousness of my heart. I've got consciousness of my dreams. I've got consciousness of my limbs and things. And do they have a voice, and can I hear it? Or, you know, I often have dreams of emaciated dogs that I forgot 20 years ago. I open up the basement door, there it is. Where have you been for 20 years? Well, I'm the instincts that you haven't fed for 20 years. I'm the body that you've starved for 20 years of spiritual food. And then you can hear its voice, you know, a little bit. Tim, how about you? I'm going to just go around the room, and then maybe we can, if you want, we can just talk a little bit this time and get to know each other, or and then go on. Go on, Tim. What would you like to add?
Well, I'm really enjoying this interchange. I'm also interested in hearing Adam's story, a little bit of where you have come from and what's going on with you. I think that's one of the greatest challenges now is in this incredibly materialistic secular world, and especially for those of us who are over 40, trying to come to terms with the spiritual reality of being alive in this very complex and materialistic world. And I think all of us are on the same page, where we are devoted to the mystical and magical world of the inner life, and need some help in trying to negotiate how to interface with that. I was just reading an article this morning with a scientist who's working with plants and trying to understand plant intelligence. And this interviewer, who's very much embedded in the materialistic culture, keeps asking these questions about, well, how can you tell what plant intelligence is, and how do you define mind, and all these things. And the woman scientist was answering very well, I thought, saying, well, how can you tell if a human being has a mind? You know, kind of going back to those critical questions about who are we, how do we interface with the world, and how do we make sense of the things that are around us. So it's just an absolutely fascinating conversation for me, and I encourage everybody.
And what about like jellyfish? Have you ever seen a jellyfish? And it's incredibly conscious, or an octopus, you know,
with no brain. So how do they?
Strange from us, and so far removed.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Jung says in the Red Book, he says, I've outgrown my brain. No longer do I flow back. So what he's saying is consciousness is not in my brain. My brain is something like a receiving set or something, you know, but anyway, who I am. Stuart, did you have it? And then we'll go on to Ivan. Yeah.
Just this very small thing just to throw in there. I happened to see a small video clip on Facebook earlier on there of a small tortoise. Yeah. And it was on its back, and like, you know,
Yeah.
4 legs going like this, stuck on its back. And there was another tortoise. I don't know if anybody saw this. And straight away, the second tortoise made a beeline for the first one, got his nose in underneath him, and tipped him back over. And I thought, that's amazing. That's flipping amazing. Compassion.
Yeah.
There's a recognition. There's a whole process going on in there. There's a compassionate process. There's an identification. There's a recognition, and there's, you know, deductive thinking as to what needs to happen next, and a compassionate action. Oh, that's amazing that life is compassionate. That
Well,
life
yeah,
needs,
and you know,
responds.
one of the things that blew me away one time is I saw it at the Sheds Aquarium in Chicago, is called a Seaweed Seahorse. It has the same leaf growing out of its body as the seaweed it lives in. Okay, now, and then you go into Hawaii. They don't have any bees there, so how do the flowers pollinate? They don't have any hummingbirds. A honey creeper, and the flower is shaped exactly like the honey creeper's bill, you know. And it's called the iiwi bird, you know. But it somehow is. How did that consciousness come about? You know, it's just amazing. But
so Greg, so you know, there's some evidence of how life itself responds
yes,
to our need, life responding to life's need. So life is in me. I experience some sort of want, desire, draw towards the invisible worlds, more knowledge, whatever it might be that pulls me in. Life will respond. The experience is interactive within us. So as soon as we take a step out, it automatically takes a step in.
yes,
See,
it fills every niche. Fills every niche.
Yeah, there's a corresponding action in each and every moment. Depending on, it doesn't matter what direction we go in, life will respond.
Says we don't come empty-handed, you know. And the voice of the soul says, if you will lend me your attention, I will give into your hand the morning star, you know. And so, I mean, they don't come empty-handed. They don't come empty-handed to the flowers of Hawaii, or to the honey creeper, or to the all these wonderful forms of life. Ivan, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Sure. It's interesting. I was actually talking to my wife about this earlier today because she was wondering why I'm so interested in my dreams. She comes from a really Christian fundamentalist background that she's rejected over time, and kind of more towards the world of the materialistic. And she was telling me that she kind of doesn't want to think of the unconscious, or the concepts that dreams might have some meaning, or beyond randomness, or just things that are in your head that your brain is processing. Whereas I've been going from the opposite perspective, where I grew up not very spiritual, not religious at all, and very much in the world of science and materialistic stuff. And I think that's great for building rocket ships and vaccines and making cars and stuff like that, but it doesn't explain what you'd call the soul, or the pleroma, or you know, this connection we have to something, consciousness. What does this all mean? And that's what I've been trying to explore more and learn about. And so I've kind of come to Jung indirectly. A lot of this has just evolved for me over time. It was first, you started with like a yoga practice that just kind of got me aware of the felt sense of things and separating my thoughts from my being. And then drawing and doing artwork and kind of experiencing a calm and joy outside of words. More so, especially the idea that this idea of the imagination of things, you're not necessarily coming up with ideas. Ideas kind of come to you when you're in the right space. And so my dad actually kind of, he introduced me to Jung stuff. And when I first started trying to read it a couple of years ago, I found it a little dense and a little dry, and I didn't quite understand it. And as this pandemic hit and just various experiences in life, I've been finding myself dreaming a lot more vividly and having lots of symbols and things coming to me. And it's felt important and worth exploring, and like there's something there. So I've been diving into it really heavily now and trying to make sense of all these things coming to me and what they mean in the grander scope. So I've been finding this all very interesting, and I come to all this without any judgment or any pre-concept of what I think is true or untrue. I'm trying to come to this with a very open mind of just accepting a lot of different stories that I'm hearing here that I find very interesting, and different ways of looking at what I find to be similar things. I think there's a lot of schools of theology and philosophy, a lot of myths that are all sort of explaining the same thing in different ways, but with very common symbols. And I'm finding it very fascinating and very, very important and useful.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, this is the myth, is that the daimon, who's fully conscious, you know, even in a baby just born who was silenced by the angel, is longing itself. Okay, it is missing its homeland, you know, that it came from, and it gradually, you know, for instance, in the case of your wife who's interested in dreams, at some point maybe a mysterious longing will overcome her, that she's now I find sometimes especially with my wife, she's an earth mother, and all she's interested in is grandchildren. She doesn't want to hear about anything other than that. So now here's me, who only can give birth to my thoughts, you know, telling a woman that she's going to have longing someday that she doesn't understand. But you know, that's you know what awakens us to, and you know, some, you know, like the Zen master says don't start this unless you're like a man with his hair on fire. Well, you know, the hair on fire is the longing, you know. Jakob Burma, or, you know, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was a mystic, and he said that longing created the world. It's longing created the world.
Yes, as soon as you said that, I'm looking at the cover of my journal right now, and I don't know if you can see this, but this is the hair on fire concept.
Yes. I got to go to speaker view so I can see it better here. Yeah. Okay, let me see just quick there. Yes, beautiful.
See if I can get it in.
Yes, I see it. If you go to speaker view, I was on gallery view. Yeah, there you go. Here, in fact, by the way, Tim is an artist at timholmes.com in Helena. You can see some of his artwork. Well, okay, Miles, Kevin, you were next, but now Miles is next. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Miles. Do you have any comments other than your sky is beautiful?
You see what, if you put it on speaker view, do you see the moon in that? There's an arrow-shaped cloud.
Yes.
In the middle is the remnants of the moon, the crescent of the moon. I've got a blazing sun to my left, and I looked up and I saw the moon. I'm not sure. Are you able to see the moon in that cloud?
I think it's a little obscured.
Through the cloud there.
But that's wonderful, that the moon in the middle in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is.
And I'd just like to thank.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Tim for asking the question, what is the pleroma? And I'd like to thank you for the wonderful definition. The pleroma is the latent potential of all possibility. And then you went on, all future, past, and present, or present at once. And Tim is in Montana. I am in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, on the traditional territory of the Niitsitapi. You mentioned black elk, And if we were here 200 years ago, there would be no border between Tim and I. And I'm not sure if you can see, but
Yeah.
you can just get glimpses of the Rocky Mountains there. It's capped in white snow. And if I was to just keep those Rocky Mountains on my right-hand side and I just started walking, I would run into Tim. I don't know how many days walking, but what I just wanted to connect this all together is that you mentioned black elk, and if we were here definitely 300 years ago, oh, pardon me, we were here 300 years ago, there would be no border between Tim and I. The concept of the United States and Canada didn't even exist. And black elk and his ancestors and the Blackfoot Confederacy lived on this continuous piece of land. And Dr. Leroy Little Bear, who is a Piikani elder, he did a presentation, Blackfoot Metaphysics and the Ensoulment of the Land. And I just wanted to point out that in the chat, I posted a link to a Zoom where Tim, he doesn't know I've done this, but it is, you know, he probably wouldn't want to blow his own horn, but he's going to be presenting a tremendous example of what I would say is the ensoulment of the land tonight.
Well, it's a wonderful, that I'll tell you, there's no, he's fairly near Glacier National Park, which is right short of what is it, Jasper? What's the name of the park near Banff?
Glacier? Or where I am? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm in Calgary, Alberta. It's a city of about 1.2 million, and it's
But what's
larger
the
in
national
population
park?
than all of Montana.
What's the national park
Banff
that links
National
with?
Park, Jasper.
Yeah, Banff. Yeah, okay. Just called Banff.
And then there's Waterton
Yeah.
International Peace Park. We have an international peace park between Canada and the United States. It's called Waterton on the Canadian side, and it's called the Glacier National Park in Montana. It's Glacier Waterton International Peace Park. So, you know, a sort of remnant of the fact that this was actually a contiguous piece of unique land, the Great Plains.
You know, Jan mentioned.
So anyway, I'll just conclude with invite everybody to join this Zoom call
Tim
tonight.
Okay.
And Tim has had some interesting numinous experience. So
yeah,
thank you, Tim.
Yes, and
great to see
thanks
everybody.
Thanks, Miles, for pointing that out. And I think here we are in this time when all of our borders are dissolved. You know, we are kind of blessed with this wonderful opportunity to realize that we're all in this ship together. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about this Zoom capacity, is to be able to speak to people all over the world who are dealing with all the same stuff. So thanks to everybody.
Yeah, the world's never going to be the same. Again, you know, just to, you know, to build on to what Jan said, and to build on what Jeffrey Raff says and what Barbara Hanna says, is what Robert Johnson would do, talking about place. He would take you out into the wilderness, and he'd make you sit on the ground, and he'd put a perimeter of stones or sticks around you at sundown, and you have to sit there until sunrise, awake. That was one of his introductions to active imagination, to to developing an organ of perception, organ of perceiving. And we're, you know, part of the reason that it's so difficult for us when we go into active imagination, and there's nothing, it's just blackness. There's nothing's coming to me, you know, is that our brains are so invested in places far from the natural world, and far from the heart, you know, go ahead, Stuart, and then we'll hear from Kevin.
Yeah, no, well, I was just going to say, as an exercise, you know, coming from the place where I sort of am, you know, therapist and Gestalt and all of that sort of thing. I think an interesting exercise that I would sort of put into the group here, if I could, would be I'd give everybody an actual egg.
Say that again.
An egg. Like I'd bring in a hen's egg.
Yeah.
And give an egg to every person and say, okay, I want you to bring that with you everywhere you go for the next 48 hours. And at the end of the 48 hours, we're going to meet again. And I want you to tell me about your experience of, you know, being mindful about the egg that you have in your pocket. And I draw the analogy that this egg is the experience of meeting your own soul within active imagination. So, you know, how much attention are you willing to give it? And what happens to the egg if you don't give it attention? What happens to your pocket, rather, if you don't give the egg in your pocket any attention? So just to bring that analogy that this is work that we have to apply ourselves to. And in the beginning, we're not applied to it at all. We're distracted. We're out there. Do you know what I mean? We're at a beginning point. The gas is not turned on underneath the pot, basically. You know, there's nothing happening until we engage with the process of incubating the egg. So it's like calling, you know, you ring the bell for people to go to prayer. Well, it is a calling to prayer. This work is very sacred work, and we need to place ourselves into that sort of sacredly framed state of mind. Otherwise, we're just ordinary people doing ordinary things, and we're not going to get really any result. You see, so you know. Anyway, there you go, the Eggman.
Yeah, well, it's very related to the tradition of mindfulness, and mindfulness is very important in active imagination, to be aware. You know, Jung said he would never let any passing. I mean, you might every once in a while see a image. Remember one time when I was doing it, I saw that figure. Is his name Yitzi or something? That Utsi, or that was the man they found in the Alps. I saw him on the couch, you know, and you don't let that image go. And then you want to know, why did I see Utsi? You know, what is that? So he would hold on to it. And this, Barbara Hanna tells the story of Menelaus, who was trapped on an island because of calm seas, and he wanted to know. The daughter of Proteus, you know, said, "What are you just wasting your time on this island for?" And he tells him, "Well, there's no wind." He says, "Well, if you're very careful, you can." My father Proteus is known as he's a word soothsayer. He was the sooth means forsooth, you know, means truth. He could not speak lies, and he knew everything, but he was very evasive and elusive, and he was a shapeshifter, you know. So she had him then dress up in the skins of seals, because he was the sort of related to Poseidon a little bit, but you know, he's the king of seals. So they put seal skins on, and when he comes down to county seals, they suddenly jump up and grab him, and he changes into lions and elk and everything else, but they just hold on. And finally he says, "Okay, what do you want?" You know, and then this image of Utsi or whoever, "Tell me why you're here." I mean, this is what Jung said, that he would let no dream go be an unopened letter. He would let no image go without asking it, "Why have you come to me?" Because the ego didn't create that. So all of these unconscious contents that long for the light, that come up and are gifted to us, they're gifted to us. And if we just let them pass by, they're unopened letters, you know. And I had a dream where the anima is carefully taking everything I throw away, putting it into this magic garbage sack which just keeps growing and growing and growing and never bursts. And I look at it, and it's all golden. It's all radiant and shining. So, I mean, she's collecting all of these images and things that I just let pass by, which are from the unconscious. They are an invitation to dialogue. When you do the dialogue with them, you, I, and thou are talking. What happens when I and thou talk? I, thou is created. And that's not I, and that's not thou. It's the third thing. This is what the transcendent function is. And it is the symbol. And it's a thing that's never been seen before on land or sea. And it's really our ontological purpose is to be the midwife of the symbol. And the symbol is something that's wordless, yet is totally transforms us. Once the symbol, and this is something that Jeffrey Raff mentions, that all of these things that Jung tries to hold on, like with Proteus, to ask why they're here, or answer my question. We need to hold on to them with relentless memory. I mean, all of these images that have become symbols, we can't let the symbol go away. And this is the way that we create our own personal myth. And this is the way the world comes into being. The second creation. And the second creation is this mythical world that we create, which has a smiling face, but when it turns its back, it's invisible. Because it's in creatum. It's radix ipsius. It's the root of itself. It comes from nowhere, and it's, but this is what we're trying to create in our lives, and how our consciousness now, wherever we go, as Stuart says, have that spirit of that myth that we created. One thing Hillman says, there was no monotheism until there were priests, and there were no priests until there was a lack of shamans, So all of these images we have are all these individual voices that come from the depths. They all come from the same source, but they all have different things. What my foot says to me is going to be different than what my elbow says to me, and yet they have their own voice. Jordy, yes, go on. What would you like to say? And then I'll shut up because Kevin hasn't got to say anything. Go ahead, Jordy.
Well, one question related to what you mentioned. Have you heard about voice dialogue, I suppose?
Now, can you say that one more time?
Have you heard about voice dialogue?
No.
Hal and Cedar Stone, that some fellow named Gempfo Mercel or something developed into a meditation technique.
No, I have not heard about it. Could you put that on the link so I can read about it?
Well, I am in a tablet, but I'll email that to you.
Yes, email to it, and then I'm going to, if everybody, Adam and Jan too, if you can send me your regular email, then we have a kind of an email list, and you can tell us anything you want and share things. And
very short. I'll make a short note. This was a couple, Hal and Cedar Stone, who spent some time at Zurich Jung, and developed a technique of connecting to the archetypes through giving them voices.
Yes.
Now we are listening to Craig's Fear, and you put yourself in second person, and it spontaneously it flows.
Yes.
And there are control voices, there are instrumental voices, but there are voices which are open and with access to them, and some other voices which are locked in the basement. And when you unlock the basement once, it's some sort of relief. And some fellow translated that to some sort of Zen meditation type. And the idea is to connect to the big mind, big heart, big mind of the galaxy, presumably. And it does work, on my experience, but it's the type of thing you better don't try to do that alone. You better put yourself in a passive position. Do that with somebody else as operator.
Yes.
I would like to share a couple of one personal stories, but I'm not sure that
Yes,
that's the
please
right moment.
do. Go ahead.
A story number one is with myself, make it short. I've been engaged, particularly in the last 3 years, in intense Vipassana meditation, of which I have resistance because it's somewhat mind-driven, but it does work. I mean, in 10-day courses of 11 sitting hours a day, that type of thing, Goenka. And one of the part of the meditations, which came usually at the end of the course, it's called metta, M-E-T-T-A, which is some sort of connecting with a benevolent heart with living matter. And in a way, embracing your enemy, not pardoning, not being judgmental, giving good vibes.
Yes.
And in my practice, the most important thing is to start with your own superego, say hello to the superego, be equanimous, and leave him alone.
Yes.
Don't fight with him.
No.
Now, the Vipassana or the Buddhist meditation emphasis is not judgmental, equanimity, and being spot on the moment, getting there with an agenda. Now, in 11-hour sittings a day, you get sleepy and you dream.
Yeah. Yes.
So you forgave yourself for dreaming, and back to the nose or back to the perception or back to whatever you are engaged in that moment. That's, I guess, exactly the contrary, and we are expected to do with Barbara Hanna's active imagination approach.
Yes.
You have to be engaged in the content, not allow the content flow, and detach from it. So
Yeah, well,
I anticipate a problem here.
I think both are important.
Otherwise, meditation is a good training for getting laser quality focused.
Yes. Yeah, both are important. I mean, one thing Patrick's control told me that when you experience life itself, it's also experiencing you. So you're bringing it alive, you know. But the thing that Jung would say about Zen meditation is, you know, that Europe, you know, we're in Europe, you know, you don't want to see the face that you had before you were born. You want to see your fully developed human face. And Jung's way was through creating the symbol. Now the symbol, the one-pointed meditation of nothingness is very important and very powerful. Yet it is somewhat, you are returning to the womb. You're returning to maternal bliss, you know, of where there are no moments, there is nothing there. You're really returning to Eden. And Jung says we can't go back to Eden. You know, we have to, you know, keep our feet on the ground, you know, on earth. You know, Hermes in the Emerald Tablets says its strength is perfected when it returns to the earth. In other words, the most important color in alchemy is not albedo, which is whiteness, which is this meditation. It's rubedo. Yeah, it's body, redness. You know, so that the strength. This is why Hermes was so much more important as the dark brother of the Lord of the upper worlds, who is Christ, who was the son of man. They call him and they call Hermes the son of the great world, because he's the son of the universe, you know, and he's more human to us because he has darkness, and he enjoys the company of criminals and thieves as much as he does of saints, you know, and so, I mean, it's a very much more human, body related way, you know. Now, I'm not, now on the other hand, if you experience this being in itself, it experiences you, and you are developing the personality number 2, you know, which is ability to go into that place at any time of the day or night. But the idea of Jung is to have the dot, it doesn't want to be worship, but it wants to have a tension between the ego and the self in dialogue. And that through images, and Jung calls this pleroma the realm of images. And he says, when we die, we return to the realm of images. It speaks in image, which is a wonderful thing to think of. You know, it speaks, its grammar is images, which it arranges like a genius and has a story, you know, and it has a place. It establishes an inner area. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart. Then we got to go to Kevin. And then I'm going to let it finish with Adam and Jan. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just I wanted to respond to what Georgie had said there with the voice dialoguing. I'd have some experience of that. And also the big mind, big heart exercise as Genpo Roshi does it. And also the meditation practices. In a way, yes, they're all parts of active imagination, but active imagination goes further. And particularly it goes further within the work of Jeffrey Raff, where we begin to actually make real the psychoidal being, which links us with this sort of other realm beyond us, the realm of the gods and goddesses, if you like, the deity within us. So by making real, by entering into the relatedness of that psychoidal being, we are entering into the relatedness of the deity of which they represent. So it's like stage 2 of voice dialogue, or stage 2 of big mind, big heart, because now you're not speaking to one of your parts, you're speaking to the big mind, big heart combined, masculine, feminine, god, goddess, but you're speaking to it through the relatedness of the experience. So it's now embodied within you as a direct experience. So in that way, it's an advancement of the basic exercises, which would be voice dialoguing and the meditation practices, and even the big mind, big heart exercise. They're all very, very useful. But I think in Jeffrey Raff's work, he has really hit the nail directly on the head in encompassing the relatedness of the work and the essence of the work in this, the potential of the work. He has locked it in that, in his process, in his books, in a very unique way. Whereas the other practices are sort of, close, but not really hitting the bell. So I just want to respond directly to what you had said, Geordie, by that.
Yeah, well, and we'll go into we'll start next time with the case of Edward, and I just want to mention the characters in it. You know, it's the guide, you know, where her first thing to him is she raises her glass to him in a brothel and says, "A bientôt," you know, see you soon. You know, that was the dream. And then he goes in to see her. She's his guide and his anima. And then he meets Four Eyes, who's a woman with 4 eyes, which are, by the way, are red, which is feeling, blue, which is thinking, green, which is sensation, and yellow, which is intuition. And then he meets the witch, and who becomes 4 breasts. She's a woman with 4 breasts, a white woman. And then he also meets the dwarf hunchback, who is the Kabiri. He's the god of creativity within him, and the dove, who is the bond of love, who is his best friend. The best friend of the god of creativity is the bond of love. They're a pair. Let's hear a little bit from Kevin, and then I'd like Jan and Adam to close it out. Go ahead, Kevin. Is in Philippines, and I believe it's past midnight there. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, it's quite
Sorry.
quiet here. I'll just be very quick. No, that's fine. Yeah, for people that doesn't know, I'm half Filipino, half Norwegian. My background is organizational psychology. I think what is also important to perhaps know a bit is perhaps, you know, why am I here, sort of, or why am I interested in Jungian psychology? I think it's dreams that has put me here, and some dreams / experiences, and you know, and so it's not like, and once you have, let's say, archetypal dreams or so on, it's not like you can just throw them in the garbage. You are stuck with these experiences, and so and and yeah, so that's pretty much it. So yeah, so you get to see sort of the reality of the psyche, and
Yeah.
so that's why.
Yeah, well, Kevin, the other day in one of his dreams saw the self looking at him, an indigenous version of himself in the reflection in a store window, looking at him with the view of who's called the spirit of fire, ice, fire, water, wind, and ice that we meet, whose very gaze is assigning a task to Edward. Well, let's just finish with Jan and Adam. And I just think the reason it went on a little bit long today is because there was such great energy. And I think we'll start next time with Adam. I'd like you to kind of tell the story of your life. And Jan, you can too, because it is, you teased us. Okay, Jan, why don't you, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, just to kind of add that you can make your own sand tray. It's good for those of you who have an inferior sensation function, which I do, because you want to explore the inferior function. But you can just put a rice, for example, in a box, you know, a shallow box, like a Xerox box top or something, and then make your own little figures. And or probably have little knickknacks that you can use to symbolize things, and then just see what happens. I mean, the whole idea is just not to try to direct it necessarily at first, to let it kind of direct you. But that's all I want to add, and I really appreciate everything, Craig, that you've done here, and I'm very excited for what you all are doing.
Well, yes, thank you, and I'm sorry that it we kind of just, I think everybody was very excited today. There's a good energy. Well, Adam, would you like to close it out for us?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, this is my first time meeting all of you, and I appreciate all the contributions that everybody has made. And it makes me realize that the process that I am going through and have gone through is, although in some ways it seems like it's unique, it also has a lot of commonality with you all, and I assume all human beings in some way, you know, getting connected to this stuff. And it's interesting what you mentioned, Craig, about Kevin's dream about the indigenous self facing him, because, you know, part of this experience that I had in October that I can tell you more about next time, actually it took place over a period of a few days that included Indigenous Peoples Day in the United States. It used to be called Columbus Day. And you know, one of the things was I just felt like this huge pull towards indigeneity, you know, and especially Native American traditions from North America. And, you know, there's some things there that it's a little hard to talk about because they were so strong, and it's like, it almost feels like, you know, I'm worried because do I have this like savior complex or something? But I just felt like the Great Spirit was coming through me and was saying like, now is the time. You know,
yes.
I mean, that's pretty heavy, but amazing at the same time, you know? So I'm still working with, I don't know, just the whole experience of my whole life. I feel like I'm in a totally new phase now at this point, and really looking forward to
Well,
working
well,
with
we'll
this.
start with your story, and also Jordy and Jan, if you have anything to add when we start next time. We really, I think you're just adding. I don't know, you three are adding some very good energy. You know, my
Yeah.
wife's father was a professor at Grinnell College in religion and philosophy for about 50 years. And right before his death, he had a dream that he was riding in a refrigerated truck that was full of refrigerated animals in the back of the truck. And I just said, you know, he missed he was far removed from nature and in the instinctive life. You know, I mean, I don't know. That was part of the thing. Jordy, did you have something to say?
Yes.
I thought, yeah, go ahead.
Housekeeping. You record the session.
Yes.
Will a link how to?
Yes, it'll be on YouTube, and
Yeah.
I will send. Make sure everybody sends me their email address, and I'll put you on our mailing list. But also, I will put it on Facebook too, in the group section. There'll be a link to it. And
Now,
go ahead.
More housekeeping. Are we saving the chat because there are important things?
Yes, I can actually. We are saving the chat. I will put the chat in the email that I send, which will be the archive of it. Actually, I'm not going to send the 500 meg or whatever this thing is when I'm done, but I will send a link to it on YouTube. But I also send the chat too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, for the non-English speaking dumb old people like me, I made 65, say 1 month ago. What, in a nutshell, what is the homework for next session?
Okay, the homework for next session.
What do you expect me to do? I mean.
Okay, well, I would do two things. There are two exercises, and when you send me the link or your email, I will send you the book of ally work. And I think there's really two exercises in there that are important. One is to, when Poimander shows Hermes the light that made Hermes Hermes, you're supposed to go in and ask to see Poimander's light, okay, in an active imagination. The other one is, I think, just to take a dream and to dream the dream on, as Jung said, but do it by pretending or assuming or lending your consciousness to a figure in the dream and have it speak to you in speech. You can also do it on the typewriter, but try to, as much as you can, have that being see you with its own eyes and then talk to you. You know, and this is a skill. It's like learning a violin. It's gonna take months and months to develop to a high level. You know, it is not something that's easy. And because what you're doing is you're developing the organs of perception of an invisible world, so you can see Huldra's invisible back, you know, at some point, or at least see her smiling face, you know, which you can view.
So, how much time daily or weekly? It's
30 minutes.
Daily.
Well, you just do one 30-minute session. Let me tell you what I do. I do 30 minutes of a meditational vision where I just meditate. And then as soon as I feel like the light of nature or some kind of a buzz, you know, then I try to go somewhere. And go somewhere, be intention. I have a focus, you know, go to your childhood home and open a few doors, or, you know, try to go somewhere. Now, one thing Jung did is he would dig in the ground, and he would see each shovel full of dirt as he threw it out until his head was underneath the level of the surface. And then he would start to swim through the dirt, you know, with his hands, and he would come out someplace. And then he would look around, where am I? you'll see just very vague beginning images. You'll see something, and no matter how nebulous it is, go with it. Is there a forest over there? Yeah, there's a forest over. I'm not sure if there is, but I'm going to go as if there is a forest over there. So I'm walking towards the forest. Now, do I see a campfire? Yeah, I'm not sure if I see a campfire, but I'm going to go towards it as if I see a campfire. So now this is developing the organs of perception of the imaginal world. And at the beginning, you don't want to have just darkness all the time. So that's why the pretending is good. Let's say you just got total darkness in your active imagination. There's total dark. Well, imagine a character you saw in your dream and see them. See what they look like. And then go into them and have them talk to you. And ask them where you should go. Take me somewhere. And then have them tell you where they're going to take you. Then you follow them. Then you say, what happens next? But try to do that for 30 minutes. But then what Jeffrey Raff is really, I'm saying that's what I do to begin with. But it just gets you, you lose the critical thinking aspect. So now you can do the active dialogue, which he recommends. And the reason I do it on a keyboard or on a Word document is because of relentless memory. I want to be able to read it later and to assimilate it and digest it and make it part of me and not let it go into the anima's garbage bag, forever expanding garbage bag. I mean, I need to, where it's golden and numinous, but it's gone from memory. I need it there and I need to save it, So the assignment for next time is to do at least 30 minutes of a typewritten or handwritten dialogue where you ask some figure in a dream or whoever you consider your internal control to be, ask them to show you the light. And then if you're going to talk with them, be them and have them see through their eyes, see yourself, and then talk to yourself.
30 minutes, it's half a
30,
page.
30 minutes, you can do it on 2 different days. One day you might want to do the see the light one because that takes a while because you should wait for it. You should wait for the light. And then the one where you pretend, you can start pretty much as soon as you feel that you're in a where the critical thinking function has went away. Where what Tim does is when he does his art is he takes the boots of a Marine sergeant and puts them outside his door and then slams it shut because he's leaving the negative critical thinking saying, this is all nonsense. Why are you wasting time? There's, why don't you go get a soda or Google something? This is a waste of time. So you need to have that inner critical voice, shut the F up, and don't bother me. The major 2 things are the most important thing in here is persistence. Sometimes I find on the leanest day, the most nothing day of active imagination, the next day I'm coming there with steely-eyed determination that I'm going to see something, and so don't be discouraged by the nothing days that seem flat. Do it anyway, So because that's the whole thing is sometimes when you play the violin, it's boring, but you're not going to learn to play the violin until you actually do it. Well, I just wanted to, we'll head out here, but I just want to say hi to Norma. I haven't seen Norma before. Norma, we're just about to end, but I just wanted to say hi to you. Norma, I said we're just about to end the meeting, but I just wanted to say hi to you before we ended it. So let me unmute you for a second if I can. And by the way, I think Louis is here too. Louis, you're here. I'll say hi to you. Hi, Norma. Can you speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Hi. Sorry, I got in here a little late, did I?
Yeah, we're just about ready to end. We normally start about 10 a.m., but you missed a pretty good meeting. We didn't get anything accomplished, but we talked a lot while we were doing it.
Well, good. I can probably watch a rerun.
Yes, it'll be on YouTube. And Norma, by the way, if you'll send me a link or your email, I'll put you on our email list.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I thought I have signed in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, I mean, I have an email list I'll send out to everybody. But Louis, okay. I'm sorry, Louis. Did you have any closing words or not?
No,
Okay.
I only noticed the announcement on your Facebook page that you're having a meeting.
Yeah.
And I noticed it like an hour or so late. So
that's okay. Well, anyway, next time we're going to start with Adam, Jan, and Jordy kind of telling us a little bit more about themselves, and anybody else that has any big things, and then we maybe can talk about our active imaginations, and then we'll go into the case of Edward. Yeah, Jordy, go ahead.
How many more sessions do you expect to hold?
An infinite amount, even if I'm with myself. If I'm here all by myself, that's okay. I'm going to keep going. This is sort of an exercise for me as well, No,
it's learning by doing to all of us, I gather.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be, we're all beginners. I mean, I don't think anybody here, other than possibly Stuart, is, very deep. I mean, Tim and Gary do some great work, and Ivan has these wonderful dreams all the time, and then Jan, you can tell us more about sand play, and Gary's very good at the chakras and the things. So we all got these special things, but we're all learning, and we're all. I feel that we learn together better than sometimes, because it comes a little more alive. So anyway, well, go ahead. One more thing, Jordy. Go ahead.
It's a closed group, or we expect people dropping, joining, etc.
Well, yeah, you can come in. Anybody can come in. You know what? I don't know if you ever heard of the founder of Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov, Israel Ben Eliezer. But he said, in the universe of the Besht, everyone felt as if they belonged. So anyone who comes here is welcome. So and everyone, we're all learning together. So there's no teachers. I blab a little bit more, but it's just because I have the, sort of an intent and a focus, but it's mainly to get other people to speak. So anyway, we will end this session and start up at 10 a.m. Chicago time next Saturday, and every Saturday, as long as you guys want to come. So thank you all for coming, Jan and Norma and Miles and Adam and Jordy and Louis and Kevin and Gary and Tim, okay. And Ivan. We'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.